We've got these N-words believing that they're Africans. This is on the Google Plus blog. Not totally accurate, but a step forward in the right direction for in awareness. During the height of the Egyptian New Kingdom, in the 15th century BC, Egypt controlled virtually their entire Levant, including all of Siam, all of Canaan, and much of Syria. It ruled these territories for 7 centuries, but it did eventually lose them in the 12th century BC during the Bronze Age collapse. Ancient Egyptian, Ancient Israelite, Ancient Egyptian Wig. Note, Egypt was the only country in the world that is part of Asia and Africa. Remember that the Moorish Quran said the Canaanites were the first to inhabit Africa. They came from Asia. Wasn't it Jesus the Son that said, "I go to prepare a place for you, so where I am, ye may be also"? Levant. The term is often used in reference to the ancient lands in the Bible, Bronze Age, the kingdom of Israel, Ammon, Moab, Judah, Edom, and Iran, and the Phoenician and Philistine states. The Levant is the eastern Mediterranean area now covered by Israel, Lebanon, part of Syria, and western Jordan. Coined from the French, Levant, raising, referring to the raising of the sun in the east, or the point where the sun rises, Ra, the sun god. The Levantine has been an artery of migration between Africa and Asia for over 100,000 years. Pharaoh Muslim Thermos III, burger of Mudgrad. You see, the sun enfolds me in the lightning comes to my aid. If you say deity, I'll say yes. If you say goddess, I'll say oh yes. Blasphemy, and I'll say oh no, for even you say that God is all. Chapter 47, Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominican of Africa. The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites of the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the Dominican of the Mexican, the first true and divine name of Africa. The dividing of the land between the Father and the Son. The Dominican of Cush was northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's Dominican of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittites, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking homes. Their Dominican habitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across the Great Atlantis, also the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantic Islands before the great earthquake which caused the Great Atlantic Ocean. The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdom. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaohs of Egypt in those ancient days for trade, and it extends eastward from the river Nile, westward across the Great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family because all the inhabitants of Africa were in honor of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the Holy Land of Canaan. What your ancient fathers were, you are today without doubt of contradiction. There is no one who is able to change man from the descendant nature of his forefathers unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. These holy and divine laws are from the noble prophet Drew Ali, the founding of the United of Moorish Science Temple of America. Dear Nick Cannon, descendant of Semitic-speaking people, somehow, by the 20th century, the geneticists found Moorish and Moor suddenly transferred into Berber Arab, a grave contrast to historical precedents. Truth of genetics caught up with history. The next time you cook with a pastry fork spatula, remember that it was this 13-year-old Negro Hebrew girl named as Anna M. Mangia who invented it in 1892. Hebrew, any member of an ancient Northern Semitic people that were the ancestors of the Jews. Biblical scholars use the term Hebrews to designate the descendants of the patriots of the Hebrew Bible, that is, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, also called Israel. Semite, a member of a group of Caucasian-Nord people who speak a Semitic language, including the Jews and Arabs as well as the ancient Babylonians, Assyrians, and Phoenicians. Another word for a Jew. Isn't Jew a religion? According to recent DNA study, Berbers are Caucasian-Nords. Arabs, even though they have sub-Saharan black African ancestry. An Arab can be defined as a member of a Semitic people inhabiting much of the Middle East and North Africa. The ties that bind Arabs are ethnic, logistics, cultural, historical, nationalist, geographical, political, often also related to religion and to cultural identity. Who were the ancient Moroccans? North Africans in the United States are Americans with origin in the region of North Africa. This group includes Americans of Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria. Moroccans are Moors. They are also the descendants of Moors, under both the Roman and medieval usage of the term. The term Moor was also used to denote various other Muslim populations by the Spanish and Portuguese, who were used to calling Muslims Moors. Geography of Canaan. Canaan is a very diverse climate because it is situated between the Mediterranean Sea and the Arabian Desert. In general, its summers are hot and dry, while its winters are chilly and produce most of the precipitation for the area. Its highest point is 9,000 feet above sea level, Mount Hermon, and its lowest point, the Dead Sea. It's the lowest on Earth at about 1,300 feet below sea level. The dry areas of the Levant are similar to desert climates, with very little rainfall and the only source of water coming from the Sea of Galilee, Jordan River Valley, and springs in the bedrock. The humid area of Canaan has a very different climate with over 12 inches of rain per year and much more vegetation, including wild wheat, barley, and olive trees. The climate of this area is similar to that of other Mediterranean nations such as Greece and Italy. Canaan was the name of a large and prosperous ancient country, at times independent, at others a tributary to Egypt, located in the Levant region of present-day Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Israel. According to the Bible, the land was named after a man called Canaan, the grandson of Noah. In biblical and historical usage, the term Cushite, Hamanites refer to individuals of East African origin, Horn of Africa and Sudan. Abraham's wife Sarah, his half-sister, his father's child, was a Cushite. Ham, according to the Bible of Nations in the book of Genesis, was the second son of Noah and the father of Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. Ham's descendants are interpreted by Flavius Josephus and others as having populated Africa and adjoining parts of Asia. Ham's second wife Hagar was from Asia, Arab. From the George Lopez Show, Charles Barkley, 11% North American, 11% Caucasian, 78% African. Snoop Dogg, 23% North American, 6% European, 71% Sub-Saharan African. Koran questions for Moorish children. Number 14, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. I read in the 70s or 80s in Ebony magazine that when the well-to-do Americans went to Morocco to vacation with the well-to-do Moroccans, they were still calling them nigger. So the Moroccans started sending for pale-skinned women to marry so they could remove the hue from their skin tone. Did you know that the United States was Morocco's neighbor, and most importantly, was Morocco? The United States had a 50-year lease agreement with Morocco to explore the Americans' land, but once the contract was concluded, they betrayed Morocco, invaded the territory, and Christianized the population. Marine's theme. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. The line to the shores of Tripoli refers to the First Barbary War and specifically the Battle of Dednok in 1805. The halls of Montezuma refers to the Battle of Chapultepec during the Mexican-American War, where a force of Marines stormed Chapultepec Castle. Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, what he was referring to when he said that we are exiles at our own land. This is what he was talking about. Queen Ty, Queen Mother Ty, widow of Amenhotep III and mother of Akhenaten, and is of Semitic stock. Titles: Princess of both lands, the chief heiress of all lands. Temple at Seti-Ka was built in her honor. Queen Nefertiti, Egypt's first lady, likewise of Semitic stock. Her titles: Great Heiress, Princess of all women, and Princess of South and North. Lady of both lands, she has bore Akhenaten 3 daughters. In spite of his proto-Semitic strand, the ancient Egyptian himself never became a Semite. He used the Arabs in the land, Ham and Shem. Egyptians married women of other cultures, but would not let their daughters marry into another culture. From the teachings of the noble prophet Drew Ali, the industrious acts of the Muslims of northwest and southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hammonites, and Canaanites who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua and received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle in that portion of Egypt. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms are called this day Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. Moors, morally, mark. From Instant Vocabulary, Ira Eldridge. The root mors, morally, mark, comes from the Latin mors, meaning death. Mortal, one who is subject to death, as human beings are mortal. And mortify, hurt, embarrass, humiliate, do not actually mean death. The humiliation suffered is a death to pride. Remorse, torture of conscience, and remorseful, tortured by remorse, also mean a type of suffering rather than death. Words have not only letters, but overtones of meanings, connotations. The noble prophet Drew Ali tells us that white means purity, purity means God, and God means ruler of the land. He tells us that black, according to science, means death. People will call the pale-skinned people God, but won't call me by my legal name, L. The prophet has a law in the books of the state of Illinois, county of Cook, that lets me correct my name and become a citizen in my own right. Nick, I was perplexed at what the Semites said to you, that your speech reminds Semites of the Holocaust, that you were anti-Semitic. For one, when they say anti-Semitic, are they saying all Semites are reminded about the Holocaust? Every day I am reminded about the injustices of people of my hue and my hair texture. 400 years of mental and physical torture. Am I supposed to, if I had the money and power, destroy people's career? Is he really a Semite? When we were growing up in Harlem, our demoralizing series of landlords were Jewish, and we hated them. We hated them because they were terrible landlords and did not take care of the building. A coat of paint, a broken window, a stopped sink, a stopped toilet, a sagging floor, a broken ceiling, a dangerous stairwell, the question of garbage disposal, the question of heat and cold, of roaches and rats, all questions of life and death for the poor, and especially for those with children. We had to cope with all of these as best we could. Our parents were latched to futureless jobs in order to pay the outrageous rent. We knew that the landlord treated us this way only because we were colored, and we knew that we could not move out. The grocer was a Jew, and being in debt to him was very much like being in debt to the company store. The butcher was a Jew, and yes, we certainly paid more for bad cuts of meat than other New York citizens, and we very often carried insults home along with the meat. We bought our clothes from a Jew, and sometimes our second-hand shoes, and the pawnbroker was a Jew. Perhaps we hated him most of all. The merchants along 125th Street were Jewish, at least many of them were. I don't know if Grant's or Woolworth's are Jewish names, and I well remember that it was only after the Harlem riot of 1935 that Negroes were allowed to earn a little money in some of the stores where they spent so much. Not all of these white people were cruel. On the contrary, I remember some of them who were certainly as thoughtful as the bleak circumstances allowed. But all of them were exploiting us, and that was why we hated them. The Germans carried out what's been called the first genocide of the 20th century in order to gain access to the natives' land. Some 80% of the Herero people and half of the Nuba people were wiped out. To this day, much of the most valuable land in Namibia is owned by the descendants of German colonists. Germany ruled modern-day Namibia, a colony called German Southwest Africa at the time, from 1884 to 1915. Following an anti-colonial uprising, Germans murdered at least 65,000 Herero and 10,000 Nuba people by means of sexual violence, starvation, forced labor, malnutrition, and medical experiments. Revelations 1:14-15. His head and his hair were like white wool, and his feet likened to fine brass. Sub-Saharan Africans have tightly curled hair, and Libertine Arabs, Italians, and Greeks are most likely to have curly hair than most other people. The woolly hair version is nearly exclusive African. Its high prevalence could be explained by the fact that most Africans are carrying 2 copies of the dominant gene. This would ensure that coarse hair texture is maintained in population. Scientifically, the black Mormon is the only organism that possesses the microclonial DNA that has all the variations possible for every different kind of human being on Earth. When the DNA of a black woman mutates, all other types of human beings come about. You can research this topic and it is true. This is called the Eve gene, and is only found in black women. Clinging gown with Sharon pattern. Lady Tefranides' latest creation is the stunning gown made of a single piece of extra fine linen pleated into a chiffon pattern in the back. The edge in front is fringed. Human hair and sheep's wool are skillfully combined to make an imposing wig which is placed over the lady's natural hair. Around the top is a fillet of cobra with hoods expanded. The necklace consists of 3 rows of semi-precious stone. The costume will be worn for the first time by Queen Nefertiti at today's consecration ceremony at Akhenaten. Neanderthals. Would they have evolved into humans? Neanderthals and humans existed at the same time. If they had evolved, it would have been in a different way. Neanderthals, although were the closest thing to modern-day people, they still were quite different. They were a different species. It's amazing that some were able to mate with humans, but only human males were able to have offspring from Neanderthal females. Because of genetic differences, Neanderthal males couldn't impregnate human females. No human today has the microclonium DNA from a female Neanderthal, but we all carry microclonium DNA from a human woman, black woman, microclonium DNA, the Eve gene. During the Stone Age, humans shared the planet with a number of now extinct human relatives, including Neanderthals and Denisovans. Read Genesis 1:26, where it says, "And God said, let us make man in our own image," etc. And then read the Quran questions for Moorish Americans, number 15. For what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? For the uplifting of fallen humanity. This page is for all the dark-skinned women that sat in front of the bus in protest before Rosa Parks, who the NAACP didn't feel was worthy enough to go to court for. From the depths of the sea to the zenith of the heavens, the list of outstanding women of my hue and my hair texture spring forth. Ancient man and his first civilizations. Ancient Kemet and Mexan, modern Egypt. Ancient Sumer, Agat, Assyrian, Mesopotamian, modern Iraq, ancient Elam and Persia, modern Iran, ancient Canaan and Phoenicia, modern Israel and Palestine, the original black civilization of Crete and Greece, the Mennonites and Macedonian, the original black civilization of Italy, the Etruscans, the ancient Indus Valley, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, modern India and Pakistan, Sargon of Akkad. Sargon of Akkad flourished 23rd century BCE, ancient Mesopotamian ruler, reigned c. 2334 through 2279 BCE, who was of the earliest of the world's great empire builders, conquering all of southern Mesopotamia as well as part of Syria, Anatolia, and Elam, western Iran. Sargon of Akkad, Beeman of America, you are what your ancestors were, without doubt or contradiction. The ancient Greek and Roman societies were black, albino, and mulatto. This is the only real image of Alexander the Great, and he's on a corn. That was Dr. Jensen, a geneticist. Find and listen and watch Ken Ham hosting a series of shows telling you about a lot of what the noble prophet Drew Ali tells you about in his teachings. Dr. Jensen says that we are more related than we think. It's on YouTube. Ken Ham is hosting the shows on this channel. One of the series is on Jews. Ethnocentrism holds skin color and other physical features to be irrelevant as long as one is a member of the same culture or becomes so. The racial worldview holds that, regardless of behavior or cultural similarities, a member of an inferior race, who is usually perceived to be so by means of physical features, can never be accepted. Race is an invented, fictional form of identity. Ethnicity is based on the reality of cultural similarities and differences and the interests that they represent. That race is a social invention can be demonstrated by examination of the history of the idea of race experienced in the English colonies. Dear Nick Cannon, I know that it feels like I am all over the place, but to give you the remnants of my mind, the mind and or soul of a woman of my hue and or hair texture, dark skin, woolly hair, we find truth all over the place. A lightning bolt there, a spaceship here, a telepathic message, a voice from the tree, a validation of the teachings of the noble prophet Drew Ali. Secret lessons were released from India, Egypt, and Palestine. The noble prophet Drew Ali published these secrets in 1927. Some people say that the prophet was wrong about this or that. What they are forgetting is that this is ancient history, over 100,000 years or more history. The archaeologists have found the teachings true. They have also found that some of the teachings we thought were true in the Bible were not. There is no evidence of an exodus from Egypt. Today's Jews do not have DNA of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Bible, Revelations chapter 2, verses 9, I know thy works and tribulations and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say that they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. If the biblical exodus really happened, there would be ample evidence available to us, especially after the Egyptian hieroglyphics were open to translation in the 19th century. The Rosetta Stone, which was discovered in 1799, enabled linguistics to begin translating Egyptian hieroglyphics, leading to the expectation that evidence of the Israelites in Egypt would soon be found in the copyist ancient Egyptian writings. This gradually gave way to puzzlement because there was clearly no evidence of any Israelites in Egypt, nor of the 10 plagues of Moses or even the biblical Exodus. Historians had to begin thinking the unthinkable. Either there was no Exodus, or it was simple and minor event that did not really change history either way. It is clear that there was no catastrophic series of plagues, loss of an entire army in pursuit of the Israelites, or even the dramatic economic downturn that one will expect after the loss of a huge number of abducted slaves. The evidence is now in. Nothing happened. There was no biblical exodus under the leadership of Moses. Egypt even continued to control its Levantine provinces. The Martyr letters show that the Canaanite petty kings continued to rule the Canaanite cities as late as 1350 BCE, subject to their Egyptian overlords. With no apparent threat other than internecine squabbling, Egypt did not lose control of the southern Levant until about 1130 BCE, which is far too late for the biblical Exodus. Youngest son of Noah, the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. The people who are descendants of those who were dispersed to the four corners of the earth are not, I repeat, they are not descendants of Ham. The Americans. Note the pyramids in the background. Montezuma treated his guests royally, putting at their disposal a sumptuous palace in which to eat and rest. But the Spaniards' goal of conquering the rich empire of the Aztecs was not averted. Cortez turned upon his host and seized Montezuma himself, holding him as a hostage and forcing him to lead the Spaniards to the Aztecs' treasure. We have long turned from a pure and clean nation to a nation who destroys each other like the Cortezes destroyed us. Brother, the kingdom is inside you and outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father. But if you do not come to know yourselves, then you exist in poverty and you are poverty. The Gospel of Thomas. Your dark skin and woolly hair connects you to your Creator. But the truth is overshadowed for a time, then people forget. So everything comes down to the next time, and the cycle starts all over again. Ancient Buddha, Thailand, dark skin, woolly hair.